The morning sun barely penetrated the thick smoke that hung over downtown Seattle like a funeral shroud. Marcus Weber crouched behind an overturned delivery truck, his breath coming in short, controlled bursts as he watched the horde shamble past his position. 3 days ago, he had been a construction foreman worried about meeting deadlines and managing his crew. Now, survival was the only deadline that mattered. The creatures that had once been his neighbors, colleagues, and strangers moved with an unsettling mixture of sluggishness and sudden, explosive violence. Their gray skin stretched tight over deteriorating features, and the sounds they made, those hollow moans mixed with clicking teeth, would haunt him forever. Marcus gripped the crowbar in his calloused hands, knuckles white with tension, knowing that the small group of survivors depending on him waited just 2 blocks away in the basement of the old Montgomery Street Library. He had volunteered for this supply run because Rachel Patterson, the former emergency room nurse who had taken charge of their medical supplies, had reported they were down to their last bottles of clean water and the antibiotics were completely gone. Without medicine, the fever that young Tyler Harrison had developed from an infected cut would likely kill the 13-year-old boy within days. The horde finally passed, dragging their feet across the asphalt in that distinctive scraping sound that had become the soundtrack to this nightmare. Marcus waited an additional 60 seconds, counting in his head the way his father had taught him during deer hunting trips in his youth, then broke from cover and sprinted toward the pharmacy on the corner of 5th and Montgomery. The glass doors had been shattered days ago and dried blood. He tried not to think about whose painted abstract patterns across the white tile floor inside. His boots crunched on broken glass as he moved quickly through the ransacked aisles, searching for anything useful that previous scavengers had missed. Most of the obvious supplies were gone, but Marcus had learned to think differently in these 3 days. He grabbed bottles of rubbing alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, and found a jackpot of antibiotics that had fallen behind a toppled display shelf. He was stuffing supplies into his backpack when he heard it, a woman's voice, sharp with panic, cutting through the eerie silence outside. Marcus moved to the broken window and saw her immediately. A young woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail was running down the middle of the street, her red jacket making her visible from blocks away. Behind her, at least 15 of the infected gave chase, their moans building into a terrible crescendo that would attract every zombie in a half-mile radius. The woman clutched something against her chest, a canvas bag that she refused to abandon even as the creatures gained on her. She was heading straight toward the library, straight toward the sanctuary where 8 innocent people hid, believing themselves safe. If she led that horde to their location, everyone would die. Marcus had perhaps 30 seconds to make a decision that would determine not just the stranger's fate, but the fate of everyone he had sworn to protect. His military training from his tours in Afghanistan came flooding back. Assess, decide, act. He could let her run past and hope the zombies followed her away from the library, preserving his group's safety. He could try to help her and risk everything. Or he could create a distraction, drawing the horde in a different direction entirely, though that would likely mean his own death. The woman stumbled, her ankle twisting as she glanced back at her pursuers with wide, terrified eyes. She couldn't have been more than 25 years old. In that fraction of a second, Marcus saw his younger sister Emma in her face. Emma, who he hadn't been able to reach by phone since this nightmare began, who lived across the city and was probably dead or worse. He made his choice. Marcus grabbed a metal trash can from inside the pharmacy and hurled it through the air toward the intersection perpendicular to the woman's path. The crash echoed like a gunshot through the dead city. He began banging his crowbar against the metal security gate rhythmically, creating a din that made several zombies in the pack turn their attention toward this new stimulus. Then Marcus stepped out into full view and shouted with every ounce of air in his lungs, "Hey! Over here, you rotting bastards! Come get me!" The infected turned toward Marcus with horrifying synchronization, their clouded eyes fixing on this new source of noise and movement. He had their attention now, about a dozen of them breaking away from pursuing the woman, and the reality of what he had just done hit him like a physical blow. Marcus did not wait to second-guess his decision. He threw the crowbar at the nearest zombie, watching it connect with the creature's shoulder with a solid thunk, then turned and ran deeper into the urban maze, leading them away from both the woman and the library. His boots pounded against the pavement as he ducked into an alley he had scouted 2 days earlier, vaulting over a chain-link fence with the kind of agility that fear and adrenaline provided. Behind him, the zombies crashed into the fence with their combined weight, and he heard the metallic groan of posts beginning to give way. Marcus knew the fence would not hold them for more than 20 seconds. He spotted the fire escape ladder he had marked mentally during his earlier reconnaissance and leaped for it, his fingers catching the lowest rung. He pulled himself up just as the first zombie rounded the fence, its grasping hands missing his boot heel by inches. From his elevated position, Marcus could see the full dozen of them now gathering below, reaching upward with deteriorating hands, their moans creating a chorus of hunger and mindless rage. His chest heaved as he climbed higher, reaching the second-floor landing of what had once been an accounting office. The windows were intact, and Marcus used his elbow to smash through the glass, ignoring the sharp pain as a shard sliced through his jacket and into his forearm. He tumbled into the abandoned office space, rolling across carpet that still smelled faintly of coffee and photocopier toner, scents from a world that no longer existed. He moved quickly to barricade the window with a heavy filing cabinet, then allowed himself exactly 10 seconds to catch his breath and assess his situation. The backpack with the medical supplies was still secured on his shoulders. That was something. His arm was bleeding but not seriously. The zombies below would likely disperse once they lost sight of him, their primitive brains moving on to other stimuli. What concerned him now was finding a safe route back to the library and determining whether the woman he had saved had survived or inadvertently led the remaining zombies straight to his people. Marcus was moving toward the office's main door when he heard footsteps in the hallway outside, too quick and purposeful to be one of the infected. He pressed himself against the wall beside the door, waiting. The footsteps stopped directly outside, and then came a voice, female and slightly breathless. "I know you are in there. I saw you climb through the window. Please, I am not infected. You saved my life on the street and I need to thank you properly. Also, you are bleeding and you should let me look at that arm before it gets infected." Marcus hesitated, every instinct screaming that trusting strangers in this new world was a luxury that got people killed. But something in her voice, a steadiness beneath the exhaustion, made him reconsider. He opened the door slowly, positioning himself to react if this was a trap. The woman from the street stood there, her dark hair having escaped its ponytail during her flight, the red jacket now torn at one shoulder. She was younger than he had initially thought, maybe 22 or 23, with sharp green eyes that assessed him with the same caution he felt. "My name is Jennifer Oakes," she said, holding up both hands to show they were empty except for the canvas bag she had refused to abandon. "I am a pharmacy student, or at least I was before everything went to hell. I was at the University Medical Center when the outbreak started. This bag contains insulin, EpiPens, and a portable defibrillator I grabbed from the emergency supply room. I have been trying to reach a group of survivors that my professor, Dr. Benjamin Carter, supposedly gathered at the Seattle Grace Hospital across the city. But every route I take, I run into more of those things." She paused, studying his face. "You took a huge risk drawing them away from me. That means you either have a death wish or you have people you are protecting nearby. Given that you are still alive and seem to know your way around this area, I am guessing it is the latter. I can help. I have medical training, supplies, and information about what caused this outbreak. Dr. Carter was working on the initial cases before communications went dark. He shared some things with me that you and your people need to know if you want to survive what is coming next." Marcus examined her carefully, looking for signs of infection, deception, or instability. Jennifer Oakes stood straight despite her obvious exhaustion, meeting his gaze without flinching. The supplies she carried could save Tyler's life and benefit the entire group. But bringing a stranger to their sanctuary violated every security protocol he had established. The sound of glass breaking somewhere below them made the decision urgent. More infected were entering the building, drawn by the noise and perhaps by some instinct that prey was near. "We need to move now," Marcus said, making his choice for the second time that day. "Stay close, stay quiet, and if I tell you to run, you run without questions. The library is 2 blocks from here, and we have a very narrow window to make it back before the streets fill up again. Can you keep up?" Jennifer nodded, adjusting her grip on the precious bag of medical supplies. "I have been running for 3 days straight. 2 more blocks will not kill me, though those things down there certainly might if we stand here debating much longer." Despite everything, Marcus felt the corner of his mouth twitch in what might have been the beginning of a smile, the first since this nightmare began. They moved together into the hallway, toward the rear stairwell, toward whatever fate awaited them in the zombie-infested streets of Seattle. The rear stairwell was darker than Marcus had anticipated, with only thin streams of gray light filtering through a cracked window on each landing. He led Jennifer downward, moving along the wall where the old wooden steps were less likely to creak beneath their weight. They reached the ground floor without incident, and Marcus held up his fist in the military signal to halt. Through the small window in the exit door he could see the back alley was clear, but that meant nothing. The infected had proven unpredictable in their movements, sometimes lingering in areas for hours, other times wandering away within minutes. He counted to 30, watching for any shadow or movement, then slowly pushed the door open. The hinges squealed in protest, and both survivors froze, but no moaning chorus answered the sound. They slipped out into the alley, and Marcus immediately oriented himself toward the library using the water tower visible above the surrounding buildings as his landmark. They moved in a pattern he had developed over the past 3 days: sprint to cover, observe, then sprint again, covering the 2 blocks in agonizing increments. They were half a block from the library when Jennifer grabbed his arm, pulling him into the recessed doorway of an abandoned coffee shop. "Wait," she whispered urgently, pointing toward the library's main entrance. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. At least 20 infected crowded around the library's front steps, clawing at the doors and windows with renewed intensity. The barricades he and the others had constructed were holding, but the sheer number of zombies suggested something had attracted them to this specific location. "No, no, no," Marcus breathed, his mind racing through terrible possibilities. Had someone inside panicked and made noise? Had the horde that had chased Jennifer somehow tracked her scent to this location? Then he saw movement in a second-story window, a flash of color that could only be someone inside signaling. His heart hammered as he recognized the pattern. 3 short flashes, 3 long, 3 short. SOS in Morse code. Someone in the group knew he would be watching and was telling him they needed help desperately. Jennifer's hand tightened on his arm. "We cannot fight through that many. It would be suicide. There are 8 people in that building, including a sick kid who will die without the medicine in your bag," Marcus said, his voice hard with determination. "I did not survive 3 days of this hell just to abandon them now. There has to be another way in." He thought frantically, mentally reviewing the library's layout. The building was old, constructed in the 1960s, and he had explored it thoroughly when they first took shelter there. Then it hit him: the book return chute. The library had an old-style exterior book drop that led down a metal chute into the processing room in the basement. It would be tight, especially for someone his size, but it was possible. "Follow me," he told Jennifer, leading her around the block to approach the library from the rear. The book return was exactly where he remembered, its metal door hanging slightly ajar. Marcus pulled it fully open and peered down into darkness. The chute descended at a steep angle for about 15 feet. "You first," he told Jennifer. "Drop your bag ahead of you, then slide down feet first. There should be a rolling cart at the bottom that we kept beneath the chute. Try to land on it instead of the floor, quieter that way." Jennifer did not argue. She dropped her canvas bag into the chute, and they heard a soft thump as it hit the cart below. She climbed into the opening with surprising grace, gave Marcus one last look that might have been trust or might have been terror, then disappeared down the chute. Marcus heard a faint scraping sound, then silence. He waited 10 seconds that felt like 10 hours before her voice drifted up. "Clear. Come down." Marcus removed his backpack, sent it down the chute after her, then wedged his broader shoulders into the opening. The metal was cold against his hands as he pushed off, sliding down into complete darkness. He emerged into the basement processing room with less grace than Jennifer, tumbling off the cart and onto the floor with a thud that seemed thunderously loud in the confined space. Jennifer helped him to his feet, and in the dim light from a small window well, he could see they were alone in the room. "The others must be upstairs," he whispered, gathering his backpack and moving toward the basement stairs. They climbed carefully, and Marcus could now hear the terrible sounds of the horde above, their moaning, the scraping of hands against wood and glass, the occasional thump of bodies pressing against the barricades. The main floor of the library was darker than the basement, with all windows covered by furniture, boards, and whatever materials they had been able to scavenge. Marcus saw movement near the front entrance and recognized the broad shoulders of David Mitchell, a former firefighter who had joined their group on the second day. David was bracing the main door with his body weight while another survivor, Rebecca Stone, a high school teacher, hammered additional boards across the frame. Both looked exhausted and terrified. "Marcus, thank God," David gasped when he saw them emerge from the basement stairs. "They showed up about 20 minutes ago, just swarmed the building all at once. It is like something drew them here specifically. We have been trying to reinforce the barricades, But there are so many of them and they are not stopping. Upstairs we have a bigger problem. Marcus felt dread pool in his stomach. What kind of problem? Rebecca spoke without turning from her hammering, her voice tight with stress. It is Tyler. His fever broke about an hour ago and we thought that was good news. But then he started acting strange, aggressive, not making sense when he talks. Rachel is with him now trying to keep him calm, but Marcus, some of the things he is saying, the way he is moving, it is almost like, she could not finish the sentence but she did not need to. Marcus understood. Jennifer stepped forward, her voice cutting through the rising panic. Take me to him now. If he was bitten and you did not tell me, we have maybe minutes before he turns completely. But if it is just the fever causing delirium, I might be able to help him. Either way, standing here debating it wastes time we do not have. Marcus looked at David and Rebecca, saw the fear in their eyes, the exhaustion, the desperate hope that someone, anyone might have answers. Outside, the moaning of the horde intensified and somewhere in the barricades, wood began to splinter. Inside, a child who might be transforming into one of those monsters needed immediate attention. In that moment, Marcus realized that saving his group from the infected at their doors might be the easier challenge compared to the threat that could already be growing within their sanctuary. David, you and Rebecca keep working on these barricades, Marcus ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. Jennifer with me. We go see Tyler now. They moved deeper into the library toward the children's section where they had set up the medical area, and Marcus wondered if he had made a terrible mistake bringing Jennifer here, or if she might be the only thing standing between his people and total annihilation. The children's section of the library had been transformed into a makeshift medical ward, with blankets spread across the floor between shelves of picture books and young adult novels. Rachel Patterson knelt beside Tyler Harrison, pressing a damp cloth to the boy's forehead while speaking to him in the calm, measured tones she had perfected during 15 years in emergency medicine. Tyler thrashed weakly against the sleeping bag that covered him, his eyes unfocused and glassy, mumbling words that ran together in fevered nonsense. When Rachel looked up and saw Marcus approaching with a stranger, relief flooded her features. Marcus, thank God you made it back. I was so worried when the horde showed up. Tyler's gotten worse in the last hour, and I have run out of options to bring down his fever. She noticed Jennifer and the medical bag and her eyes widened with hope. Please tell me you found antibiotics. Jennifer was already kneeling beside Tyler, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she checked his pulse, examined his eyes and felt the lymph nodes in his neck. Marcus watched her work, impressed by her calm professionalism even as the sounds of the zombie assault echoed through the building. When did the fever start? Jennifer asked, not looking up from her examination. About 36 hours ago, Rachel replied, hovering nearby. He cut his hand on a piece of broken glass while we were setting up the barricades. I cleaned it immediately, used the last of our antibiotic ointment, but by that evening he was running a temperature. It kept climbing despite everything I tried, cool compresses, aspirin keeping him hydrated. This morning he started getting delirious, saying things that did not make sense, and becoming agitated when we tried to calm him down. I have seen infections move fast but nothing like this. Jennifer carefully peeled back the bandage on Tyler's hand, and Marcus saw the wound, a 3-inch gash across the palm, the edges inflamed and angry red, with streaks of infection beginning to spread up his forearm. But there were no bite marks, no signs of the telltale puncture wounds that came from zombie teeth. Jennifer seemed to reach the same conclusion, and some of the tension left her shoulders. This is sepsis, not infection from the dead. That is the good news. The bad news is that without immediate antibiotic intervention, he will likely die within the next 12 to 24 hours. His body is shutting down fighting this infection. She opened her canvas bag and removed a bottle of broad-spectrum antibiotics, along with sterile syringes and 4 supplies. Rachel, I need you to help me start in 4 line. We need to get these antibiotics into his system now, along with fluids to combat the dehydration. Marcus, I need clean water as much as you can spare, and I need the area around us as sterile as possible. Marcus moved quickly, grateful to have clear instructions amid the chaos. He retrieved the bottles of clean water from his backpack, the very supplies he had risked his life to obtain, and helped clear space around Tyler's makeshift bed. Rachel and Jennifer worked together with the synchronized efficiency of medical professionals, establishing the 4-line with steady hands despite the building shaking periodically from the weight of zombies throwing themselves against the barricades. As the antibiotics began flowing into Tyler's bloodstream, the boy's thrashing gradually subsided, his breathing becoming more regular. He is stabilizing, Rachel said after several tense minutes, and Marcus heard the emotion crack through her professional demeanor. The antibiotics are working. He still has a long fight ahead, but he has a chance now. A real chance. Jennifer sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her forehead. He will need doses every 6 hours for the next 72 hours minimum. After that, we can reassess. But Rachel is right. He should pull through if we can keep him stable and protected. The unspoken implication hung in the air, protected from the horde currently trying to break into their sanctuary. As if summoned by the thought, David Mitchell appeared at the entrance to the children's section, his face grim. Marcus, we have got a serious problem. The front barricades are not going to hold much longer. There are too many of them and they are not dispersing like they usually do. It is almost like something is coordinating them, keeping them focused on getting inside. Marcus stood, his body aching with exhaustion but his mind sharpening with the need for action. How long do we have? David shook his head. An hour, maybe less. The main door is splintering, and one of the ground floor windows has a crack spreading across the boards. When they break through, and they will break through, we will be overrun in minutes. We need to either reinforce our position or find another way out of here. Marcus looked at Jennifer, who had been listening to the exchange with growing alarm. You said you were trying to reach Seattle Grace Hospital, that there is a larger group of survivors there. How far is it from here? Jennifer stood, mentally calculating. About 4 miles northeast. But the route is treacherous. I came from that direction 3 days ago, and the streets were thick with the infected. That is why I was trying to find a safer path. Going there with a group this size, especially with Tyler unable to walk, would be extremely dangerous. More dangerous than staying here and waiting to be torn apart? Rebecca's voice came from behind David. She had abandoned her post at the barricades to hear the discussion, and her face showed the stark fear they all felt. We are trapped in here with limited supplies, no weapons beyond what we can improvise, and a horde that apparently has decided to make us their primary target. At least if we run we have a chance. Marcus held up his hand for silence, his tactical mind working through scenarios. Running blind into the streets gets us killed. But Rebecca is right that staying here is not sustainable. Jennifer, you said you have information about what caused the outbreak, information that Dr. Carter shared with you. Maybe it is time you told us exactly what we are dealing with, because those things outside are not behaving like the mindless zombies we have seen over the past 3 days. That coordinated swarming, the focused assault on our specific location. Something has changed. What are not you telling us? The entire group turned to look at Jennifer, and in the flickering candlelight, Marcus saw something in her expression that made his blood run cold, not fear but guilt. She took a deep breath before speaking, and when she did, her words would change everything they thought they understood about their situation. Dr. Carter did not just study the outbreak, Jennifer said quietly, her voice barely audible over the moaning horde outside. He helped create it. It was supposed to be a breakthrough in regenerative medicine, a treatment that could repair catastrophic tissue damage and essentially bring people back from clinical death. The pharmaceutical company he worked for, Meridian Biotech, fast-tracked the human trials despite his warnings that the neurological side effects were not fully understood. 3 weeks ago, the first patient received the treatment at Seattle Grace. Within 48 hours, that patient had died and reanimated, attacking hospital staff. By the time they contained that initial outbreak, 12 people had been infected. They thought they had stopped it, kept it quiet, tried to develop a counteragent. But one of the infected security guards made it out of the hospital before showing symptoms. And here we are. The room fell silent except for Tyler's labored breathing and the relentless assault of the dead against their walls. Marcus felt a rage building in his chest. Rage at the arrogance of scientists playing God, at corporations prioritizing profit over safety, at a world that had died because someone thought they could cheat death itself. But beneath the rage was a more pressing question. Why are they swarming this building specifically? What drew them here? Jennifer met his eyes, and he saw tears beginning to form in hers. The counteragent. The medicine in my bag that I have been protecting. It emits a pheromone signature as it degrades outside refrigeration. To us, it is undetectable. But to them, it is like a beacon, calling every infected in range directly to its location. I did not know until it was too late, until I noticed the pattern of them following me. Marcus, I am so sorry, but I have turned your sanctuary into a target. Every minute I stay here with this medicine, more of them will come. The silence that followed Jennifer's confession was broken by Rebecca's bitter laugh, sharp and humorless in the candlelit space. So you are telling us that we have been fighting to protect you and your bag of medicine, and that very medicine is what brought the horde down on us? That Tyler might survive his infection only to be ripped apart by zombies that you led here. Jennifer flinched as if struck, but she did not look away. I did not know. You have to believe me. Dr. Carter told me to bring the counteragent to the hospital, that it was our only hope of stopping the spread. He said people needed it. I thought I was helping. By the time I realized the infected were tracking the pheromone signature, I was already trapped in the city with nowhere to go. I have been trying to reach the hospital for 3 days because they have refrigeration units running on backup generators. Once the medicine is properly stored, it stops emitting the signal. But I could not make it through alone. Marcus forced himself to think past the anger and betrayal he felt, to focus on their immediate tactical situation. Recriminations would not save them. Action might. How long does the pheromone signature last? He asked Jennifer, his voice controlled. If you left the medicine outside away from this building, would the horde follow it? Jennifer nodded slowly, understanding where his thoughts were heading. The signature remains active for approximately 6 to 8 hours after the medicine loses refrigeration. If we moved it far enough away, theoretically yes, the infected would follow it. But Marcus, this counteragent might be the only sample left in the city. If what Dr. Carter told me is correct, it could be synthesized to create a cure, a way to stop all of this. Throwing it away to save ourselves might doom thousands of other survivors. David Mitchell spoke up from the doorway, his voice rough with exhaustion. That is a nice theory, but there will not be any survivors here if we do not do something in the next 30 minutes. The front door is about to give way completely. We need to make a decision now. Do we abandon the medicine to save ourselves, or do we try to make a run for the hospital with it? Rachel looked up from where she knelt beside Tyler, her face torn with anguish. Tyler cannot be moved yet. The antibiotics need more time to work. If we try to carry him through the streets in his condition, the stress alone could kill him, even if the zombies do not get to us first. Marcus felt the weight of leadership crushing down on him, the impossible mathematics of survival forcing him to calculate the value of one life against many, certainty against possibility, the present against an uncertain future. Then, from the shadows near the reference section, a new voice spoke, weak and raspy but unmistakably young. Leave me here. Take the medicine and run. Everyone turned to see Tyler Harrison, his eyes open and clearer than they had been in hours, the 4 lines still running into his thin arm. Tyler, no, Rachel said firmly, moving to check his vitals. You are delirious. You do not know what you are saying. But Tyler pushed himself up slightly, his face pale but determined. I'm not delirious anymore. I heard everything. If that medicine can save other people, you cannot throw it away just for me. I'm already sick. You said I might not make it anyway. But if you can get that cure to the hospital, maybe this whole nightmare can end. Maybe my mom and dad, wherever they are, might have a chance. The boy's courage in the face of death shamed them all into silence. Marcus knelt beside Tyler, meeting the kid's eyes with respect. You are the bravest person I have ever met, Tyler Harrison. But we are not leaving you behind. Not now, not ever. We are all getting out of this together, or we go down fighting as a group. That is the deal. He stood and turned to face the others, a plan forming in his mind, desperate and dangerous, but possibly their only option. We split into 2 teams. Jennifer, you take the medicine and whoever else can move fast, maybe Rebecca, and you lead the horde away from here, taking them on a route that moves northeast toward the hospital. Stay ahead of them, keep them chasing you. David, Rachel, and I will wait until the horde thins out following the pheromone, then we carry Tyler out and take a different route to the hospital. We rendezvous at Seattle Grace and pray that Dr. Carter and his people can actually help us. Jennifer was already nodding, her face set with determination. I can do that. I have been staying ahead of them for 3 days. A few more miles will not kill me, especially if I have help. Rebecca, you up for this? Rebecca looked terrified, but she squared her shoulders and nodded. I ran track in college. I can keep pace. A tremendous crash from the front of the library made them all jump. The sound of splintering wood echoed through the building, followed by the horrible scraping and moaning of the infected beginning to push through the breached barricades. They are coming through. David shouted, grabbing a metal chair leg he had fashioned into a makeshift weapon. Whatever we are doing, we need to do it now. Marcus grabbed his crowbar and moved toward the children's section entrance, positioning himself between the approaching horde and the people he had sworn to protect. Jennifer, Rebecca, go now. Out the back through the book return chute. Lead them as far from here as you can, then get to the hospital. We will be right behind you. Jennifer hesitated for just a moment, locking eyes with Marcus. In that brief exchange he saw her fear, her guilt, and her determination to make things right. Then she grabbed her canvas bag of medicine, took Rebecca's hand, and they ran toward the basement stairs. The moaning grew louder, closer, and Marcus could see shadows moving in the darkness of the main library floor, shapes that had once been human now driven by nothing but hunger and the chemical signal drawing them forward. "David, help me get Tyler ready to move," Marcus ordered, falling back to the medical area. "Rachel, grab only what supplies you can carry in one hand. We move fast and quiet once the horde follows Jennifer and the medicine." Rachel was gathering supplies when the first zombie appeared in the doorway of the children's section. A creature that had once been a middle-aged man in a business suit, now gray-skinned and dead-eyed, its mouth opening in a soundless moan as it spotted living prey. David was there in an instant, swinging his makeshift weapon with devastating force, dropping the creature. But behind it came more, pushing through the doorway in a tide of rotting flesh and grasping hands. Marcus knew with terrible certainty that their plan was falling apart before it had even truly begun, and survival might require a sacrifice none of them were prepared to make. Marcus drove his crowbar into the skull of the advancing zombie with a sickening crunch, then immediately pulled back as two more pushed through behind it. The children's section had become a killing floor, with David holding the narrow doorway like a modern Spartan, his chair-leg weapon rising and falling in brutal rhythm. But for every creature they dropped, more appeared, and Marcus knew they had perhaps minutes before they were completely overrun. "Rachel, Tyler, move to the far corner now," he shouted over the chaos, stepping up beside David to help hold the line. The former firefighter's face was streaked with sweat and splattered with dark fluid Marcus tried not to identify. Their weapons rose and fell in desperate synchronization, creating a temporary barrier of fallen bodies that slowed but did not stop the advancing horde. Then, miraculously, the pressure eased. The tide of zombies pushing through the doorway began to thin, individual creatures turning away mid-advance as if called by some unheard voice. Marcus risked a glance toward the main library floor and saw the horde shifting direction, moving toward the rear of the building in a shambling mass. Jennifer's plan was working. The pheromone signature from the medicine was drawing them away, pulling them like moths to a deadly flame. "They are following the scent," David gasped, lowering his weapon slightly. Jennifer and Rebecca must have made it outside. Marcus allowed himself exactly 5 seconds of relief before his tactical mind reasserted control. "We have a window, maybe 10 minutes before stragglers find us or before the horde realizes the scent is moving away from this building. David, help me get Tyler on my back. Rachel, you lead the way out through the front, it should be clearer now." We move fast and quiet to the northeast service alley, then navigate street by street toward the hospital. "Everyone understand?" They nodded, exhaustion and fear etched on their faces but determination keeping them moving. Marcus knelt beside Tyler, and the boy, despite his weakened state, managed to climb onto Marcus's back, wrapping thin arms around his neck. The kid weighed maybe 90 pounds, but Marcus knew that after 4 miles through zombie-infested streets, he would feel like 200. Rachel led them out of the children's section, picking her way through the carnage in the main library. The front barricades were completely destroyed, the door hanging from broken hinges, and the floor was littered with both debris and the bodies of the infected David and Marcus had brought down. They slipped through the shattered entrance into the gray afternoon light, and Marcus felt his heart hammering as they entered the exposed streets. Meanwhile, 6 blocks away, Jennifer Oakes ran with a speed born of pure terror, her lungs burning and legs screaming in protest. Rebecca stayed beside her, the former track star's athletic training showing as she maintained pace despite their sprint having lasted nearly 10 minutes. Behind them, the horde followed with that terrible combination of relentlessness and speed that the infected displayed when locked onto prey. The moaning had become a constant wall of sound, and Jennifer knew that if either of them stumbled, if either fell, death would be instant and horrible. "How much farther to the hospital?" Rebecca gasped, her red jacket now soaked with sweat. Jennifer checked her mental map of the city, trying to reconcile the Seattle she had known with the nightmare landscape it had become. 2 miles, maybe less. There is a construction site ahead, we can cut through it and gain some distance. These things are not good at navigating obstacles. They rounded a corner and Jennifer saw the construction site she remembered, a new office building frozen in mid-creation when the world ended. Steel framework reached toward the sky like a mechanical skeleton, and wooden ramps led up through the unfinished floors. "There. Follow me." Jennifer led them into the site, racing up the wooden ramp to the second level. Behind them, the first zombies reached the construction entrance, their moans intensifying as they struggled with the inclined ramp, some falling, others trampling over the fallen in their single-minded pursuit. Jennifer and Rebecca reached the 3rd floor and stopped, gasping for air, watching the horde slowly navigate the ramps below. "We need to keep moving," Rebecca said, but Jennifer held up her hand, an idea forming. She looked at the wooden ramps, the temporary construction they represented, and then at the support beams holding them in place. What if we do not just run? What if we thin their numbers? Rebecca followed her gaze and understanding dawned. You want to collapse the ramps? Trap them or at least slow them down significantly? Jennifer was already moving toward the support beam nearest to them, examining how it was secured. Help me with this. If we can knock out these support pins, the whole ramp system might collapse. It will not kill all of them, but it might give Marcus and the others a clearer path to the hospital. The two women worked frantically, using a piece of rebar as a lever, prying at the pins holding the temporary structure together. Below them, zombies continued climbing, getting closer. Jennifer could see their faces now, see the humanity that had been twisted into something monstrous. With a final heave, the pin gave way, and a terrible groaning sound filled the air as the wooden ramp system shifted, swayed, then collapsed in a cascade of lumber and bodies. Dozens of zombies fell with the structure, crashing to the ground floor in a tangle of wood and limbs. Run now! Jennifer shouted, and they sprinted across the third floor to the far side of the building where another exit led down to street level. They descended quickly, emerging onto a side street where the horde was significantly thinner, many of its members now trapped or disabled in the collapsed construction site. They ran on, the hospital somewhere ahead in the smoke-shrouded distance. Back in the service alley, Marcus led his group through a maze of abandoned vehicles and debris. Tyler's weight had become substantial, the boy's fevered body pressing against Marcus's back, but he pushed forward, driven by the knowledge that stopping meant death. Rachel navigated them around corners, avoiding the main streets where infected still wandered. David brought up the rear, watching their backs, his weapon ready. They were making good progress when Marcus heard it, a sound that did not belong to zombies. It was mechanical, rhythmic, growing louder. Then he saw it, a military Humvee, armored and battle-scarred, racing down the parallel street with zombies in pursuit. On the mounted gun in the turret stood a figure in combat fatigues, firing controlled bursts that dropped the pursuing infected with professional precision. The Humvee screeched to a halt at the intersection ahead of them, and a woman's voice called out, strong and commanding. Survivors! Get to the vehicle now if you want to live. Marcus did not hesitate. He ran toward the Humvee, Rachel and David flanking him. The rear door flew open and hands reached out to pull them inside. Marcus felt Tyler being lifted from his back, felt himself being dragged into the armored interior, heard David and Rachel tumbling in behind him. The door slammed shut, and the Humvee lurched forward, the soldier in the turret still firing as they accelerated away from the infected. Inside the vehicle, Marcus found himself face to face with a hard-eyed woman in her 40s, lieutenant's bars on her collar, and an expression that had seen too much death. Lieutenant Angela Moss, Washington National Guard, she said crisply. You people are either incredibly lucky or incredibly stupid to be alive out here. We are on our way to Seattle Grace Hospital, the last functional safe zone in the city. I assume that is where you are headed. Marcus nodded, still catching his breath, hardly believing their salvation. We have 2 more people ahead of us, leading a horde away. We need to find them. Lieutenant Moss's expression hardened. Then you better pray we reach the hospital before the horde does, because in about 2 hours, the military is going to firebomb this entire sector to contain the outbreak. Everything and everyone still in the blast zone is going to burn. The Humvee tore through the streets of Seattle, its armored hull deflecting the grasping hands of zombies that lunged from sidewalks and alleys. Marcus held Tyler against his chest, feeling the boy's fever finally beginning to break as the antibiotics worked through his system. Lieutenant Moss barked coordinates to her driver, a young specialist named Jackson Porter, while monitoring a tactical radio crackling with military chatter. Command, this is Firewatch 3. We have retrieved 4 survivors heading to Seattle Grace. Confirmed firebomb timeline. The radio hissed with static before responding. Firewatch 3 timeline unchanged. Incendiary strike begins in 112 minutes. All personnel must be clear of the blast zone. Confirm receipt. Moss's jaw tightened. Received. Firewatch 3 out. She turned to Marcus, her expression grim. Your friends have just over an hour and 40 minutes to reach the hospital before this whole area becomes an inferno. The infection spread faster than anyone predicted. The decision came down from the top, burn it out before it reaches the suburbs. I am sorry, but those are the orders. Marcus felt rage and helplessness war within him, but Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder, grounding him. We have to believe Jennifer and Rebecca will make it. They had a head start and Jennifer knows where she is going. Right now, we focus on getting Tyler to safety and making sure that medicine she is carrying actually means something. The Humvee rounded a corner, and suddenly Seattle Grace Hospital emerged from the smoke and haze, a 7-story medical complex surrounded by hastily constructed military barriers, guard towers and floodlights. Living soldiers patrolled the perimeter, and Marcus could see other survivors moving behind the fortifications. It was the first real sign of organized civilization he had witnessed in 3 days, and the sight brought tears to his eyes. They passed through a checkpoint where soldiers in hazmat suits checked each of them for bites and infection before allowing them into the compound. Tyler was immediately taken to a medical tent where actual doctors with actual equipment began proper treatment. Marcus watched the boy being carried away on a stretcher, Rachel following close behind, and felt a weight lift from his shoulders. One life saved. One victory against the darkness. But his relief was short-lived. Jennifer and Rebecca were still out there, somewhere in the dying city, carrying the counteragent that might represent humanity's only chance at a cure. Lieutenant Moss led Marcus and David to a command tent where maps covered with tactical markers showed the spread of infection and the planned firebomb zones. "We have forward observers positioned at key intersections," she explained, pointing to locations on the map. "If your people are coming from the southwest like you said, they would most likely approach along this corridor. I can have my observers watch for them, but I cannot send vehicles back out there. I have orders to maintain the perimeter, nothing more." Marcus studied the map, calculating distances and time. They should have made it by now unless something slowed them down or they had to detour. "Is there any way to contact your observers, have them signal if they see 2 women, one carrying a medical bag?" Moss considered for a moment, then nodded. "I can do that much." She spoke into her radio, relaying descriptions of Jennifer and Rebecca to the forward positions. Minutes crawled past with agonizing slowness. The command tent buzzed with activity as soldiers prepared for the evacuation that would follow the firebombing. Marcus paced like a caged animal, unable to sit still, willing Jennifer and Rebecca to appear. Then the radio crackled. "Command, this is Observer 2. I have eyes on 2 females matching your description, approximately 800 meters from the hospital perimeter. They are running hard, pursued by a small group of infected, maybe 15 to 20 hostiles. Wait, there is something else. Behind the main group, there is a massive horde, at least 300 strong, maybe more. It looks like the subjects have been leading them on a running battle for miles. They are not going to make it to the gate before the horde catches them." Marcus grabbed the radio from Moss's hand before she could stop him. "Observer 2, this is Marcus Weber. Can you provide covering fire for those women?" There was a pause, then the observer's voice returned. "Negative. We are positioned for observation only, no heavy weapons. But I see something else. There is a narrow service tunnel beneath the old parking structure about 200 meters ahead of their position. If they can reach it and navigate through, it would bring them out inside the perimeter. But they would need to know it is there, and they would need someone to guide them through from this side because the tunnel is a maze." Marcus turned to Lieutenant Moss. "I am going into that tunnel. Tell your observer to signal those women, get them underground, and I will meet them halfway." Moss started to protest, but David Mitchell stepped forward. "He is not going alone. Those women risked everything drawing the horde away from us. We do not abandon our own." The lieutenant looked at both men, saw the determination in their faces, and made a decision that likely violated a dozen military protocols. "Fine. But you have 30 minutes. If you are not back by then, I am sealing the tunnel whether you are inside or not. We cannot risk the horde finding an underground route into the compound." Marcus and David were given flashlights and a portable radio, then led to a maintenance entrance that opened into the tunnel system beneath the old parking structure. The tunnels were dark, damp, and reeked of mold and something worse, the unmistakable scent of death. They moved quickly, Marcus keeping the radio close to his ear as the observer directed Jennifer and Rebecca to the tunnel entrance. "They are inside," the observer reported. "Moving into the tunnel now. The horde is right behind them, but the narrow entrance is slowing the infected down. You have maybe 10 minutes? Before those things flood the tunnel system." Marcus and David ran through the darkness, their flashlights cutting pale beams through the blackness. They navigated by the observer's directions and the sound of running footsteps echoing through the concrete passages. Then Marcus saw them, Jennifer and Rebecca, exhausted and terrified, stumbling through the darkness toward the lights. "This way," Marcus shouted, and relief flooded Jennifer's face when she recognized his voice. They met in the middle of the tunnel, and Marcus grabbed Jennifer's arm, pulling her forward. "Run. The horde is right behind you." Behind them, the moaning began, echoing through the tunnels like the approach of damnation itself. The 4 survivors sprinted through the maze, following David, who somehow maintained his sense of direction despite the chaos. They burst through the maintenance entrance into the hospital compound with less than 5 minutes to spare before Lieutenant Moss would have sealed it. Soldiers immediately locked down the entrance behind them, welding steel plates across the opening as the sounds of the horde echoed from below. Jennifer collapsed to her knees, the canvas bag still clutched against her chest, and began laughing and crying simultaneously. They had made it. Against all odds they had survived. Marcus helped her to her feet and together they walked into the hospital where Dr. Benjamin Carter waited, his aged face brightening when he saw Jennifer and the medicine she carried. "You actually made it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You brave, foolish girl. You actually made it." Over the following hours, as the military firebombs turned vast sections of Seattle into an inferno visible for miles, Dr. Carter's team worked to stabilize and replicate the counteragent. Jennifer's courage in protecting it had given them the key they needed. In the medical wing, Tyler Harrison slept peacefully, his fever broken, his infection defeated. Around him, the ragtag group of survivors who had battled through hell together found themselves part of something larger, a community of thousands who had chosen to fight rather than surrender. Marcus stood on the hospital roof as dawn broke over the burning city, Lieutenant Moss beside him. "This is not over," she said quietly. "The infected still control most of the country. But today here we won a battle. Your people helped make that possible." Marcus watched the sun rise through the smoke and ash, illuminating a world forever changed but not yet defeated. Somewhere in the ruins, zombies still hunted. But here, in this fortress of the living, humanity was fighting back. And for the first time since the nightmare began, Marcus allowed himself to believe they might actually survive. The war was far from over, but they had lived to fight another day, and sometimes that was the only victory that mattered.